In the shadowy corners of a world that celebrates the superficial and exalts the fleeting, there exists a rebellion, one not forged in the fires of political unrest or social upheaval, but in the quiet, ascetic hearts of those who have renounced the hollow promises of modernity. This is the tale of a revolution that wears no colors, waves no flags, but instead stands in stark contrast to the glittering facade of contemporary life. It is a rebellion of spirit, a last stand against the encroaching darkness of a world lost in its own reflection. Born from the raw, untamed energy of the punk and metal scenes, a group of restless souls sought something far beyond the nihilism that once defined them. Led by a monk who had once played the heavy chords of doom metal, they carved a new path, one that led to the ancient and sacred. They called their creation Death to the World, a zine that spoke not of teenage angst or fleeting rebellions, but of a timeless, eternal struggle. It was here, within these black and white pages, that they declared the ultimate revolt, the rejection of the world's empty promises in favor of something infinitely more profound. This is the story of how a simple zine became a beacon for those who longed for a deeper truth, how it whispered of asceticism, martyrdom, and the quiet power of spiritual warfare. It is a tale of how the disillusioned found hope, not in the noise of the world, but in the silence of the cloister. This is Death to the World, the last true rebellion. The story of Death to the World begins in an unexpected place, within the shadows of the heavy metal world. In the early 1990s, Justin Marler, a founding member of the doom metal band Sleep, found himself at a crossroads. Sleep was on the cusp of becoming one of the most influential bands in the underground metal scene, but Marler felt a growing emptiness that the music couldn't fill. Despite the success, the allure of fame, and the power of the riffs, something was missing, a deeper purpose that transcended the chaotic world of punk music. In a radical move, Marler left Sleep after the release of their first album and embarked on a spiritual journey that led him to an Orthodox Christian monastery. It was here, in the stillness of monastic life, that Marler discovered a profound sense of meaning and peace. But he wasn't content to keep this newfound light to himself. Marler, along with other former punks and metalheads who had also converted to orthodoxy, felt a burning desire to share this spiritual path with others, especially those who, like them, were disillusioned by the world they once embraced. And so, in 1994, Death to the World was born. The title itself was a bold statement, a declaration of war against the superficial values of modern society and a call to embrace a life of spiritual rebellion. The zine was a unique blend of Orthodox Christian teachings and the raw, defiant energy of the punk and metal subcultures. It presented the ancient faith as the ultimate rebellion, one that transcends the fleeting trends of the world. Through stark black and white imagery and powerful, uncompromising language, Death to the World challenged its readers to look beyond the facade of modern life and to embrace the ascetic, spiritual path of orthodoxy. It spoke of martyrdom, monasticism, and the struggle against the passions, a message that struck a chord with those who were tired of the emptiness that the world had to offer. The success of Death to the World lay in its authenticity. It wasn't just preaching from a pulpit. It was the voice of those who had been in the trenches, who had faced the same struggles as their readers and had found a way out. The zine didn't sugarcoat the challenges of the spiritual life. Instead, it presented orthodoxy as a path that was difficult, but ultimately rewarding, a true rebellion against the decay of the soul. While the roots of Death to the World were planted by Justin Marler and other Orthodox Christian converts from the punk and metal scenes, the spiritual foundation of the zine is deeply intertwined with the teachings and legacy of Father Seraphim Rose. A former beatnik and seeker of truth, Father Seraphim was born Eugene Rose in 1934 and lived a life marked by intense spiritual searching before finding his home in Orthodox Christianity. He eventually became a monk, taking the name Seraphim, and was instrumental in the revival of Orthodox monasticism in America. Father Seraphim Rose was known for his uncompromising approach to faith, his deep commitment to asceticism, and his writings on the dangers of modern secular culture. He warned against the spiritual emptiness of the modern world, describing it as a culture of death that led people away from God and toward despair. His works, such as Orthodoxy and the Religion of the Future and Nihilism, the root of the revolution of the modern age, became essential readings for those in the Orthodox Christian community who sought to understand and resist the corrosive influences of contemporary society. It is within this context that Father Seraphim's teachings found a natural resonance with the creators of Death to the World. The zine's core message of rejecting the superficiality and falsehoods of modern life in favor of a profound ascetic spirituality echoes Father Seraphim's warnings and guidance. His influence is evident in the zine's emphasis on martyrdom, spiritual warfare, and the rejection of worldly desires. The creators of Death to the World were deeply inspired by Father Seraphim's life and works, seeing him as a spiritual father and a guide for their own path. His writings provided the theological backbone for the zine's content, helping to articulate the Orthodox Christian response to the spiritual crises of the modern age. Father Seraphim's message of living a life in the spirit of death to the world, where one dies to the passions and to the superficial distractions of society, became a central theme of the zine. In many ways, Death to the World can be seen as a continuation of Father Seraphim Rose's mission to reach those who are lost in the spiritual wilderness of modernity. The zine brought his teachings to a new generation, one that was seeking authenticity in a world of pretense, and offered them a path to true spiritual rebellion through Orthodox Christianity. In the very first issue of Death to the World, the cover featured a striking black and white photograph of an Orthodox monk holding a skull. This powerful image was more than just a visual choice. It was a profound statement that encapsulated the essence of the zine's message. The monk's solemn expression and the stark, monochromatic tones of the photograph drew immediate attention. The skull he held was not merely a prop. It symbolized the ancient Christian practice of memento mori, the Latin phrase meaning, "remember that you will die." This concept is central to many Christian traditions, especially within monasticism. It serves as a reminder of the inevitability of death and encourages believers to live with a focus on spiritual rather than earthly matters. Memento mori has deep roots in the Orthodox Christian tradition. Monks, in their ascetic practices, used reminders of mortality to keep their focus on spiritual goals. By meditating on death, they sought to detach themselves from the superficial concerns of daily life and to dedicate their energies to prayer, repentance, and living a life aligned with divine principles. This stark imagery stood in sharp contrast to the excesses and distractions of contemporary culture, challenging readers to reconsider their values and priorities. By presenting this image, Death to the World offered not just a critique of modern life, but an invitation to embark on a path of radical spiritual renewal. It was a call to remember that life is fleeting and to live with the end in mind, embracing the eternal truths of Orthodox Christianity as a form of profound and meaningful rebellion against the ephemeral nature of worldly existence. Imagine the fervor of punk, its raw energy and defiant spirit channeled into something deeper. Death to the World embraced this spirit, not as a simple act of opposition, but as a spiritual revolution. The zine proposed that true rebellion wasn't about bucking authority for its own sake, but about transcending superficiality and diving into the depths of personal and spiritual struggle. It framed spiritual rebellion as an internal revolution, a quest to overcome not just societal norms, but one's own inner battles. Orthodox ascetic practices, often seen as austere and restrictive, were reimagined within these pages as radical acts of resistance against the distractions of modern life. Fasting, prayer, and monastic discipline weren't just rituals. They were seen as bold statements of spiritual commitment, challenging the constant bombardment of contemporary temptations and superficial desires. In this reimagined narrative, rebellion became a quest for deeper truth, not just a gesture of opposition. The zine's pages were alive with personal transformations, telling the stories of those who had left behind their former punk or metal lifestyles to embrace Orthodox Christianity. These stories weren't sanitized or idealized. They were raw and real, offering a glimpse into the profound changes that conversion brought to these individuals. Each testimony painted a vivid picture of their journey from disillusionment to spiritual awakening, revealing the depth of their personal struggles and the genuine search for meaning that led them to orthodoxy. Critique of modern society was a central theme in the zine's essays, which used an orthodox perspective to address contemporary moral and ethical issues. Consumerism, materialism, and moral decline were dissected not just as social problems, but as symptoms of deeper spiritual crises. The zine argued that modern culture's flaws were rooted in a lack of spiritual awareness, suggesting that the path to true understanding lay in embracing orthodox teachings as an alternative to mainstream values. Monastic life, depicted in the zine, was presented as the ultimate form of rebellion. Far from being a retreat from the world, the monastery was shown as a space of radical spiritual commitment. The daily routines of monastic life, with their rigorous ascetic practices and communal living, were portrayed as a powerful counterpoint to the chaotic energy of punk culture. This contrast highlighted how monastic discipline could offer a profound and serious form of resistance, emphasizing that true rebellion lay in the depth of one's spiritual commitment. Through these themes, Death to the World offered a compelling narrative that redefined rebellion in the context of Orthodox Christianity. It wasn't just about opposing the status quo, it was about seeking a deeper, more meaningful existence, using both the fervor of punk and the discipline of orthodoxy to create a new kind of spiritual revolution. Beauty will save the world, Fyodor Dostoevsky. Progress with its machines has made the world regress to a place where there is no beauty. If there is no beauty, what will save the world? From the womb we are taught that things detestable are attractive, and therefore the image of true beauty is deformed. Since there is no distinction between what is beautiful and what is deformed, the youth of today are left with chaos. We are told that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But if this were true, the world would never have a chance to be saved, for man's interpretation of beauty can be deadly. Beauty is truth, and truth is beauty. But truth could never be in the eye of its beholder. For to say this is to say that there is no ultimate truth hand, there is no answer to the question, why? In the past, mankind had a way to express true beauty, and to express man's seemingly confined soul, and to elevate it to its true state, which is beauty. This was done through the arts, through painting, literature, sculpture, drama, and music. The arts of the modern world have confused and deformed souls, and no longer elevate them to a higher state. They only express the soul of modern man, which has fallen headlong into destruction, despair, and sorrow. This is due to man's fulfilling his earthly desires and forgetting his otherworldly calling. As time presses on, it seems easier and easier to forget all that man was created for in the eyes of God, but we must not forget all that many are called, but few are chosen to be not of this world. As the echoes of a tumultuous modern world reverberate through our lives, we find ourselves in an age where the profound has been diluted by the superficial. The clamor of a culture obsessed with endless categorizations and shifting identities, from the bewildering discourse of countless genders to individuals claiming identities as animals, has created a cacophony that drowns out the essence of spiritual truth. Amidst this sea of confusion, where the depth of human experience is often reduced to fleeting trends and transient labels, it's easy to feel lost, adrift in a world that seems to have forgotten the weight of genuine meaning. Yet, in the midst of this noise, there lies a call to rediscover something ancient and profound: the path to awakening through the teachings of Christ. The true essence of spirituality, the core of what it means to connect with the divine, has not vanished. It is merely obscured by the fog of modernity. In a time when the word now seems to be synonymous with weakness and fleeting concerns, the call to return to a faith that has endured for centuries becomes a beacon of hope. In the quiet, sacred spaces of Orthodox Christianity, we find a path not just to exist, but to truly awaken. Here, amidst the timeless practices of prayer, fasting, and meditation, lies a profound antidote to the superficial distractions that plague our world. This is a call to remember the depth of our spiritual heritage, to embrace the radical simplicity and profound truth that Jesus offers. As we navigate this chaotic landscape, let us remember that the path to spiritual awakening is not found in the noise of modern discourse, but in the quiet, transformative power of faith. It is in reconnecting with the teachings of Christ that we find our way back to what truly matters, rediscovering a sense of purpose and clarity that transcends the transient concerns of the age. In this moment of overwhelming distraction, let us choose to awaken in the way that has always been true and enduring, by turning to the timeless teachings of Jesus. Let this be our rebellion against the chaos, our stand for something deeper, more authentic, and eternally meaningful. Through this journey, we reclaim our spiritual essence and find our way home. If this message resonates with you and you seek a path to something deeper, more authentic, and enduring, then join us on this journey. Like, subscribe, and become part of a community that is rediscovering what truly matters. Your support helps spread the word and brings more seekers to the path of awakening. Together, we can navigate through the noise and find our way to the profound truths that have always been there, waiting to be rediscovered.